Day 2, and they let us back. OutKick 360 on the OutKick OTT network. We are live from Studio G in Nashville, Tennessee at Blackbird Studio, state-of-the-art facility right here in Nashville. Glad to be here and back alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharsky. I'm Jonathan Hutton. We've got the whole crew on hand. Jacob Swanson, Lance Lee, Charlie Courts, and the chairman of the board, David Reed, is back with the show. It is great to have Reed back in the fold with us. Glad you're with us as well as you watch wherever it may be, YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter. If you caught the podcast last night, thank you. Please rate and subscribe to those channels. A lot to hit today as we kick things off.
Check out Reed's announcement, which he posted on Twitter. We retweeted. Very effectively done. Big man with big news.
Well, OutKick 360, that's where you follow us on Twitter. Our old RSS feed was stolen, so now we have a new one. It's OutKick 360. Search for it there. You can find our podcast that way. You can listen to us on your way home. But David Reed back in the mix, boys. It feels like home, right? I feel whole again. Yes. Now with David Reed a part of the show. So thrilled to make that announcement.
I agree. And hopefully there are people watching right now that feel great that I have a desk in front of me. That's what you guys noticed this?
This is
I rewatched.
OutKick immediately got the desk for me this morning.
I rewatched and I felt I was in agreement as once was said that you needed the desk.
Well, a couple things. One, the fact that we made it out of one show with no litigation and we're back.
Tremendous.
The second show is huge.
Our lawyer was very excited.
And the audience, we apologize to Patrick, whose wife really enjoyed the crotch shot with Jonathan Hutton.
Yeah. She must be.
Sorry, Patrick.
But
we have to make her
requested a desk, so we saw to it that because we want to meet the demands of the people, that we
outside
provided
of
a desk.
that one wife.
By we, I mean Lance and Jacob provided a desk. And Charlie Courts for Hutton.
Withrow
he's got a desk today. This is great. I did nothing. We showed up and a desk was here.
The two of us showed up and sat back down. Hutton, were you involved in the placement of the desk or was it there?
No, I was involved in the placement of the desk. It was here, and we set it down right here in front of the chair. It's not bad.
No, I rewatched, and immediately I was like, oh, I see exactly why people were talking about the crotch shot.
It wasn't that Hutton looked bad in it. It looked like he was conducting a TED Talk. Like it looked like we were his subjects and he was interviewing us and we were the guests because we had the desk and he didn't.
You got some good guests. Congratulations.
Great guests on your first
day.
Thank you.
Quality.
Congrats on that.
And you got them for 2 hours. I mean, that's hard to get people for 2 hours.
Very busy schedule.
Let's get after it. You can follow us on social media. That's how we'll interact with you as we kick off the first week of the show. Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. Message us there and react to the news of the day. We're going to hit NFL free agency right off the top. The OutKick Tennessee Power Hour coming up in hour number 2, where we're going to hit a lot of Titans and Vols. But the Titans actually lead the conversation today with Bud Dupree making the splash signing last night with the announcement that he's going to sign on Wednesday, tomorrow, with the Tennessee Titans. Paul, a 5-year agreement, and more importantly, they get their pass rusher. They address the biggest need of their free agent and off-season months ahead.
Now, I've said, and I think we've all said, they have to go get somebody, and overpaying is fine. Long list of guys. He wouldn't have necessarily been my favorite, but that's fine. They absolutely had to have somebody, and they got their guy. He's coming off an ACL, so I suspect he won't be ready for training camp. That was December 2nd, I think. In my post, which is unlocked at paulkuharsky.com, there's a video he posted in January of an early walk he took in rehab. So he was sharing some of his rehabilitation. The other thing I'd say is he's not been the best pass rusher on his team, right? T.J. Watt, a Defensive Player of the Year caliber guy. Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward, superior defensive line guys. So he's been part of an awesome front. Now he's coming to a front where he needs to be probably the lead dog. They got significantly better yesterday with him. Now he'll start opposite Harold Landry. Jeffrey Simmons, an up-and-comer who hasn't shown enough pass rush push yet. And Denico Autry, who we talked about right here yesterday, who is a huge upgrade over somebody like Jack Crawford, Matt Dickerson, who I don't understand how he's been sticking around, Laurel Murchison, who's going to go into his second year now, doesn't have to be asked a lot of. That front four is way better with those two additions than it was, but you're counting on Dupree to take a very heavy leadership role and probably be your lead dog, whereas in Pittsburgh, he was, second, third, maybe even fourth amongst that super high quality. And when you're signing a guy to what could be a $16.5 million average, we haven't seen the details of the contract yet, he's taken on a whole new role. And there's a question there that needs to be answered. That's part of the intrigue of the whole deal.
Well, even if he's the fourth best pass rusher or contributor on defense in Pittsburgh, it's still an upgrade for the Titans defense,
Absolutely.
which was pathetic a year ago. So that's good news. I am intrigued by this whole idea of he's a good player. There's no doubt about it. It's a great get for the Titans. But that he was a part of this group of players that was really good, and he was a contributor, and now he's the guy. So how do you go from that to being the guy? It's
and oftentimes that's the deal in free agency, right?
Yeah, it's like a Harrison Barnes going from those great Warriors teams to going and being the guy somewhere. Well, now he's the guy, pass rusher on this defense. So how does that link over to what the Titans are trying to do? I look at it very simply. Clearly an upgrade from what they had, but it is interesting to think about, okay, now he's going to be asked to do even more, and he's not going to have the surrounding party that's going to contribute to him maybe not being double-teamed or not having certain things happen that would have happened in Pittsburgh, right?
And here's one other thing, Hut, before you go, and I know you've got good stuff on Dupree. Harold Landry played 94% last year after they spent the offseason talking about his snaps needing to come down. Bud Dupree in 2019, which was his best year, 11.5 sacks, I think, played 91%. Both of those guys need to play less. They cannot be done at outside linebacker. They need a real rotation there. They had 3 guys active every game last year, just about. They rarely played the third guy because he stunk. The second guy stunk, quite frankly. They need depth there. I would say another cheaper veteran and a draft pick. You got to have 4 options there in case you're hurt, and to have a real rotation. These guys will be far more productive if they're playing 80 to 85% or 75 to 80%. They cannot be playing 90 to 95%. There's just diminishing returns when you're going and going and going every snap. You've got to get a rest once in a while.
We will get into it. I'll go a layer deeper with Bud Dupree and his impact for this Titans, and I'll tell you why there are no excuses. We're sitting here talking about how he's a number 2 guy. There are no excuses for Mike Vrabel in this defense now with their addressment of Dupree, bringing him in and paying them what they're giving him, signing Denico Autry, who is a big, long, physical interior end who can play next to Jeffrey Simmons, and then their former draft pick in Harold Landry. They have boosted their defensive front to the point where we're not going to point back and say, oh, they signed a number 2 and he didn't live up to expectations. Been there, done that, and now it's time to execute. Now they got to worry about their back end of the defense at corner, and they're still going to address pass rush within the NFL draft. Again, more details on that coming up. The big headline in free agency across the league, all of the top-tier pass rushers are gone. Everyone has signed, and that has been the position that teams have jumped out and addressed, because normally, we saw this last year, which is why Jadeveon Clowney was able to sit out for as long as he did. Everyone either franchise tagged or re-signed their guy.
This doesn't happen. Guys don't come free.
That was not the case this year with the reduced salary cap. Teams had to make judgments and calls. Some re-sign. But you see Hendrickson, for instance, signed with Cincinnati because Lawson bounces. So a lot of domino effects there with the pass rush. And normally you don't have the top-tier caliber guys come available. And that's why we've seen the NFL and the general managers and coaches jump out and address that need first.
Though I will say there is still a reasonably good second tier here. I like Hassan Reddick, Bowser from Baltimore.
Reddick's a one-year wonder. He is a next-tier player. He is not in the same caliber of the guys that have signed.
I would agree.
You're saying the next
if you're
tier.
getting Hassan Reddick, that's still better than you could do in most years with a free agent pass rush. Justin Houston hasn't dropped off. He's an older guy, yeah, but that's a guy that can help fortify somebody's pass rush. Bowser, if you're looking for an up-and-comer, I would think Baltimore now is going to re-sign him, having lost Ngakoue and Judon. But, if they don't have him done Wednesday at 3 o'clock Central, he's on the market. Ryan Kerrigan, I still would like the Titans to get Ryan Kerrigan as the second veteran. He'll be cheaper, but he had more sacks than J.J. Watt last year and far fewer snaps. That's a guy I'd like to see in a lot of locker rooms. Kerry Hyder has a lot of sacks as a San Francisco guy. Are these second-tier guys? Yeah. Is it a better second tier than usual? Would some of these guys have been treated, Hutton, as first-tier guys in years when all of these premier guys weren't out there?
No, they wouldn't have.
Well, some of them would have gotten paid, overpaid.
No, teams would have waited just like they're waiting on wide receiver right now.
And another guy, Samuel Ebukam from the Rams, I think is an intriguing guy. These guys can still really help somebody's pass rush. They're not the premier first-tier guys, but there's another wave of guys that will help somebody. I could still see the Titans and other teams adding one of these guys at a lower cost who could really help. Ryan Kerrigan on the Titans, if he was your third pass rusher, he played 38% for Washington last year. He was upset. You get him 50% with the Titans as the third guy, who's an established veteran who's done a lot of good things over, durable, effective, great locker room guy. How good would that be?
Yep.
And then your rookie, Titans bring along their rookies very slowly. That'd be terrific.
The storyline, team-wise, are the New England Patriots.
Yes.
With what they've been doing and the money they've been guaranteeing over the last 24 to 48 hours.
You guys know where I am on this.
Very anti-Patriot of the past moves
We discussed
for the Patriots with what they're doing and what they're spending.
We'll discuss that coming up. Chime in on Twitter, Chad. We can do that at OutKick360.
Yeah, people are asking about phones. Eventually, we are going to have phones where you can interact that way. Right now, though, best way to get with us, simply go to Twitter, OutKick360. That's where you go. Hit us up there. Let us know what you want to talk about. Let us know how much better the desk looks in front of Hutton if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter.
Is there a full groin blockade or only a semi-groin blockade?
Do we have a semi-blockade or full blockade? These are important issues. If you're listening somewhere right now, you want to hear stuff, just let us know what you want. Let us know what you're thinking. Hit us up at OutKick360.
We will get into the Patriots haul and free agency. Discuss some other teams that have made some big impacts as well. Straight ahead on OutKick 360 on the OutKick OTT network. FanDuel Sportsbook is the place to get a risk-free bet. $50 risk-free bet right now if you're in Tennessee. Simply go to FanDuel.com/OK360. $50 risk-free bet. We suggest loading up on a parlay. It's risk-free, so you're going to get your money back if you lose. Load up on a parlay as the NCAA tournament gets going this week. And join FanDuel if you have not already. Chad, we will be able to do this live in downtown Nashville for the OutKick watch party with VIP.
Absolutely, and as part of that parlay, Winthrop on the money line. I'm telling you, you heard it here first. It's going to happen. Winthrop is big time. You got to fly with the Eagles. You can fly with us this Friday, OutKick 360, OutKick watch party, 6 in Peabody, downtown Nashville, terrific venue, indoor, outdoor, plenty of space. There's 100 OutKick VIPs already signed up to be there. You can join us as well. Let us know on Twitter if you're going to make it out at OutKick 360. If you got any questions about it, going to be a great time. Food and drink specials. We'll be there all day and night. It's going to be a blast, boys. Can't wait.
All right, the Patriots. This is ridiculous what they've done. And it's amazing how many compliments they're getting for this. A, this is not the Patriots' way. And B, this is not the way you win in the NFL. Per Schefter, $137.5 million guaranteed. This is the second biggest number in NFL history for the entire period. They've done this on the first day of negotiating, not even the first day of free agency. Now, obviously, that number is going to go up annually, though the cap is depressed this year. Previous teams, 2020 Dolphins missed the playoffs. Good team building, but they've already cut one of those guys.
Is this
Kyle
just
Van
day
Noy.
one, you're saying, or overall?
No,
free agency?
overall.
Okay.
So they've outspent teams over the whole free agency period. Jets, 2019 missed playoffs. We know how good the Jets are at free agency. 2016 Giants lost in the wild card round. 2018 Bears lost in the wild card round. We know where they've gotten off of this free agent spending. The Bears, a mess. 2018 Jets missed the playoffs. Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Matt Judon, Davin Godchaux, Jalen Mills, Henry Anderson, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne. All sounds great on paper. The Patriots, granted, minus the quarterback that was the key to this whole thing, in the last 3 years in free agency, $51 million total in bonuses and guarantees to free agents. $51 million over 3 years, $137.5 million in 1 day. This is not the NFL. Bill Belichick, the coach, absolute genius. Bill Belichick, the personnel guy, has not been nearly as good. If they had drafted better in 2017 and 2018, they'd be re-signing their own guys with a lot of this money. This does not bode well for the Patriots. The Patriots never win and are the story in March. The Patriots win in January and February.
The Patriots win because they had Tom Brady. That's why they win. And if you don't have the GOAT, you have to go do this.
It's not going to work.
That's why they have to go do it. And I would ask you, who's coaching those teams you just rattled off?
Well, Flores, I think, is a good coach. It's early for him. Gase, 2016 Giants would have been...
Could have been anybody. McAdoo?
Schumer or McAdoo.
Okay.
2018 Bears was Nagy. 2018 Jets. Yeah, I mean, they're bad teams.
They all suck.
But bad teams do this. And the Patriots, I would think, getting their COVID people back, if they could solve their thing, one of these things, like if you wanted to go get Henry and Smith and say, okay, we're going to be Gronk and Hernandez again, and then play second-level free agency in the draft, I could get. But we're talking about 2, 4, 6, 8 guys on the first day. That is desperate. And you pay too much on the first
I don't blame
day.
them for being
They
desperate.
They should be desperate. How did the Bucs fare
That's
in free
not how
agency
you
a year
solve
ago?
it.
How did their free agency haul work out for them?
Well, when Tom Brady's one of the free agents, that's a different deal. And they didn't get all those guys on the first day. They got Fournette in a late trade. They got Gronkowski come out of retirement late. Those guys weren't first-day free agent signings that were super expensive. Antonio Brown is way discounted.
It worked out for them. I mean, look, it's all about quarterback.
New England
That's what we're
signed-
finding out here. It's not as much about Belichick.
New England
it's way
signed
more about
Antonio
Brady.
Brown. It's too early to say that, by the way. The coach, to me, gets 3 years after the quarterback to see what he does.
Who's the last coach to win a Super Bowl more so than the quarterback? Brian Billick, who's an offensive coach coaching a defense.
Well, you could say get to the quarterback.
But my point is
the 49ers got to the Super Bowl a year ago with Garoppolo.
Shanahan's a great offensive coach. I'll agree there. They got to the Super Bowl. Who won that Super Bowl?
Yeah, the better quarterback.
Also, if it's about 3 years after the quarterback leaves, they're going into year 2, and they just missed the playoffs. So they've got to do something. And they have the 15th, the 13th or the 15th pick? I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's not like they're getting Trevor Lawrence in this draft to turn things around at quarterback.
I agree, but I'm just saying 1 year out from the Belichick-Brady divorce, it's clear who's won so far. I'm going to wait for 3 years out before I say Belichick was completely reliant on Brady and can't do anything without him.
I think you're an idiot if you think that he was completely reliant on Brady. He's clearly a good coach, a great coach. But if you're going to, I don't think it's a stretch. If you're looking at the hierarchy of what matters in the NFL, quarterback is ahead of coach.
Well, two things.
There's not any situation where that's not the case.
But coach is next.
But
very
keep
closely
in
next.
mind what happened to
Pass
the
rusher
Patriots
maybe
last
next.
year, and I think this is being overlooked. They had 8 players opt out due to COVID.
Right.
The majority of those were on defense, and it's their
And are coming
defense that brought them to the Super Bowl the previous, year and a half prior to Brady leaving. And then, of course, Brady left. So with that combination and with the lack of anything that we saw from Cam Newton within that offense, they had to go bolster their offense around Newton and more than likely a rookie quarterback. Many think that they're going to end up with like a Mac Jones out of Bama. But if you're doing that, you have to go and build around the veteran presence. You mentioned if they drafted better, they'd be re-signing. They haven't drafted well.
No.
They have not drafted well. So they have to go do this if they want to compete. Otherwise, not just the Bills, but the Dolphins are going to pass them.
Oh, I agree. I think this is too much, though. This does not, proven over time, this does not work, this strategy.
It doesn't work, but at times it's the only thing you can do. It's either that or just sit back and say, well, we got to draft better. Well, we only have so many draft picks. There's only so much we can do. If John Robinson picked, pass rush properly over the years, then they wouldn't have to go spend money on a pass rusher in free agency. They would just have it in-house. But that's not an option.
I agree.
And every GM, every team has to figure out what is the balance of free agency and draft based on what you haven't drafted well.
But second-tier free agency, there's a lot. We just listed some of the names. And the Patriots are the kind of team that could traditionally find a couple of those guys. So if you want to go get, say, Smith and Henry and Judon, fine. Is Henry Anderson a guy you got to have on the first day whose price surely it would come down, or you'd let somebody else overpay him, laugh at them, and go get the B-level Anderson? Kendrick Bourne? Kendrick Bourne is Tajay Sharp plus. To me, to pay that guy first day money I'd let somebody else do that.
I'm never going to have a problem with a team going for it. And they're going for it because it's either, first off, Bill Belichick's won enough Super Bowls where it doesn't matter if he does this and fails. If it ruins the organization 5 years from now, I doubt Bill Belichick cares. Bill Belichick is concerned with getting back in the playoffs and being in the championship hunt. So this is the quickest route to do that. Maybe you overspend on guys. Maybe you go too big in free agency. But it's a guy in an organization that's at least going for broke once again when at the end of this past year, we're all sitting around thinking Patriots may be time to rebuild, time to reset, time to start over a little bit with what happened this past season. And they're looking around thinking, no, we're going to go add some big-name free agents and get back in the playoffs this year.
Is Kendrick Bourne 3 years, $22.5 million first-day money? I mean, that's just a contract that fits what they wanted to do for the player that he is, to me. With the guaranteed money, I haven't seen the guaranteed on it, but there's a chance they get out relatively easy on that.
Yeah, it's not.
That's not first day money.
Yeah.
Matthew Judon would be first day money.
Matthew Judon, as I looked into it yesterday, could be Adalius Thomas, and that was a huge bust for them.
Right.
Similar skill set, and they asked too much of Adalius Thomas in one direction. And that was a massive free agent failure for the Patriots, the kind of move they generally don't make. So I obviously have to wait and see on all of this stuff. It's completely against what they do.
We talk about the Patriot way all the time, right? The Patriot process, how they go about getting players, develop through the draft. They go out and get someone else's trash and turn it into treasure, and they get guys on the cheap. Even the process of in the draft going for college graduates, for a while, the way they go about evaluating players.
Types.
How much of that, though, simply worked because of Tom Brady? And what I mean by this is when you have a 20-year greatest quarterback of all time, that's your quarterback, you have the luxury to piece a team together this way and to develop a system and to go about it this way. When that quarterback's no longer there and Cam Newton's your quarterback, you got to change things up. You can't just fall back on, well, this is the Patriot way and we're going to develop in the draft and we're going to get cheap guys at the back end of free agency and they're going to work out for us because we're the Patriots. You were the Patriots with Tom Brady. And I'm not going back to the Brady-Belichick debate. I'm just saying Belichick had that luxury with a 20-year quarterback run of Tom Brady because you could always fall back on, we got Tom Brady. So let's develop around Tom Brady. I can tinker with the defense. I can get guys in the draft. I can go cheap on guys. And now he's completely changed his method because that's a necessity.
The way I read it yesterday, Paul, was instead of the GOAT carrying the team, they now have they're signing a bunch of veterans to carry the team.
Yeah. It's interesting on the Jonnu Smith front, and I was on NBC Sports Boston yesterday to talk about Jonnu Smith. And they were asking me about how able he would be to carry them catch-wise if he was put into that role. And I said, hey, you put him into that role, I mean, he could thrive in that role. I talked about his unselfishness and how he was called on to block a lot more once Lawan went down, and then Lawan's backup goes down, and then you're down to third string left tackle.
You're down to Jonnu Smith as your tackle.
People are undervaluing his blocking in a huge way.
Very undersized tackle in Jonnu Smith, if you get down to that level also.
Better than Will Smith.
It's like a college spread offense tackle.
But I'm done with this segment, and before I go to bed, or is it this morning, they signed Hunter Henry. Yeah. And so now Jonnu Smith's catches are cut in half again.
For the same money, at least for the first year, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are now the top. They're tied for third for the highest paid tight ends in the league next year.
So Kendrick Bourne's stock goes up, right? Because they maybe not getting a receiver better than Kendrick Bourne because they've got two great pass receiving tight ends. It's a Gronk Hernandez kind of pairing.
Yeah. If there was an immediate transfer portal in the NFL when you sign a letter of intent in college and you decide I want to go somewhere else, I wonder if Jonnu Smith would enter the transfer portal because they've recruited over Jonnu Smith.
I guess I'm blocking again.
Yeah, looks like I'm the second tier guy.
That's a hell of a pairing.
It is. Sure. And so your top paid tight ends per year right now, George Kittle at 15. Travis Kelce at 14.3, and then you have Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry tied for third. Right behind them, Austin Hooper, who signed last year, in Cleveland for $10.5 million, and soon to be paid would be Darren Waller with Vegas.
Terrific. Though we have to say on these averages that we're throwing out on the new numbers we're getting, we have to see those contracts because some of it could be phony money that wouldn't really go into the average per year, right? So we need to see that. Like on the Titans front, we now know, and we'll get into this more in our Tennessee Power Hour, we know Autry's cap, we know Lamb's cap, the backup offensive lineman they signed. We don't know Dupree's cap. And so we don't really know where the Titans are cap-wise. I suspect these are Lamb's not a big move, but Dupree and Autry will be their biggest moves, and they're probably on to second-tier phase 2.
Paul, we might need a little preview of mashed carrots. I know we're not going to do it right now, but an explanation of what mashed carrots is for Paul Kuharsky, but also about NFL fans wanting their team to address positions in order and how that's foolish.
Well, if you want them to address it in order, then you think one of the Titans' top 3 priorities was backup tackle. And let me tell it to you. The Titans, given their holes, wide receiver, where they have one starting caliber player, far outranks backup offensive line.
Completely.
As does cornerback, as does tight end, though they re-signed Jeff Swaim this morning per our friend John Glennon. But they got a lot of work to do. Backup offensive tackle is not a high priority. Still, remarkably, they signed a backup offensive lineman on the first day, or agreed to terms.
Hit us up on social media on Twitter at OutKick360. Chad, what's rolling in so far?
So we've got, it's funny, Paul was talking about receiver for the Titans, people asking about will the Titans address receiver? Paul, I would assume that would be the case because you don't want to go in with one receiver.
Here's another mash carrots thing that I get. Immediately after these 2 signings, everybody says, so does this mean wide receiver in the first round of the draft? Can we let them have a few days of free agency? I can't tell you what they should take in the first round of the draft without seeing what they address in free agency. I know people love the draft, but it is impossible to tell you what a team should do in the first round of the draft until you see what they do in free agency. And free agency doesn't even technically start until Wednesday. So let's see what teams do in free agency before we tab their primary needs in the draft, right?
Yes.
Well, how can anyone, I mean, if you're following the Titans, how can anyone think that they're done at pass rush?
They're not.
With Bud Dupree.
Yeah, their third pass rusher right now
Autry.
is Derek Roberson, who sucked last year.
Well, look, if they still had Dean Pease, who was really good at getting creative and getting to the quarterback.
Even then you'd say they need.
Well, but then you'd say, well, it's Dean Pease, and he's a mastermind at getting the slot corner to the quarterback and scheming up blitzes that'll affect the quarterback. But they've got Shane Bowen as defensive coordinator, who led one of the historically worst defenses and worst pass rushes in NFL history a year ago. So, of course, they're not done addressing pass rush,
and
right?
we should note it's conceivable that Denico Autry would stand up at outside linebacker, maybe on some early downs, but he's very much a 4-3 defensive end. He's got the size and the skill set to rush
massive.
From inside. Yeah. So they might play with him a bit there, but it's the Jack Crawford role. Now, it doesn't eliminate Daquan Jones from contention. Daquan Jones has played nose largely, but they may align differently up front as well. And ideally, in a pass rush situation, I want to see Simmons and Autry as the 2 down linemen. Should mention that Adam Schefter just tweeted or retweeted Adam Kaplan. The Ravens are re-signing Tyus Bowser. So, as we predicted, they keep their young pass rusher after losing two stud guys.
Former second-round pick. Reported $22 million in guarantees.
And a basketball background. They dropped him into coverage a lot and had success with that. But if they set him free going forward, I think he's got a ton of upside.
We're going to start to see restructuring, too, across the NFL with contracts, which we will get to.
Can make a lot of money with the simple restructure of Ryan Tannehill, but they haven't done so yet.
So a team that I thought made a nice splash in free agency with 2 players I like, Corey Davis and Carl Lawson, the New York Jets.
Yeah.
They're not getting a lot of play because one of their rivals, the Patriots, have done what they've done. But the question is Corey Davis a number 1 wide receiver? Because he's going to play on the outside. He played 315 of his 400 snaps last year, which is a career year for him here in Nashville for the Titans. Is he a number 1 wideout within that offense? They have the speed element with Mims, and they have Crowder that plays the inside. So they have that ability. I like what they're building at wide receiver. I like the addition of Davis. The question is, what we saw last year, is that number 1 worthy in New York? And I think what really helped Corey Davis in New York was Allen Robinson getting franchise tagged by the Bears.
Absolutely.
That helps Corey Davis's value. Allen Robinson was going to be sought after by the New York Jets, if not franchise tagged. Carl Lawson, I think, is and was one of the players I had circled for the Titans to address. Solid player, I think, with the 4-3 that they're moving to. Ascending player. We have not seen him hit his ceiling yet. Just 10.5 sacks over the last 2 years. but you feel like there's a lot more there than what we saw from Cincy.
I wonder about him against the run a little bit. Blake Bedingfield, our friend, pointed out something to me I think makes a lot of sense, that if you're on a really bad team that gets run on a lot late, you have to kind of put that into the equation of the run defense.
Yeah.
You know, because you're going to get run on late. The team is going
Yes.
to get run on late. So you might discount the run defense a little bit because you're seeing so much more late. And I think that's a fair thing with Carl Lawson. But I scored him down a little bit in that. And also, I think probably inherently I was just a little bit anti-Carl Lawson because Titans Twitter was massively pro-Carl Lawson. As for the Corey Davis thing, I do not think he's a number one wide receiver. I think he could be a very good number two wide receiver. I'm very concerned the way he disappeared against Green Bay and fell out of that Baltimore playoff game. He had built. And then to finish at the end with those 2 out of the last 3 games was concerning to me. But he's a team-first guy, works his butt off, stayed healthy in his last year. It's not going to cause any kind of – he's got no receiver diva in him whatsoever. I think he's worth a shot.
I want a little receiver diva in him,
I
honestly.
do too.
I think he could use a little bit of that.
I want some in my room. You're not going to get
I'm
any
saying
out of
more
Corey
of
Davis.
a
You're not going to get it
give
out
me
of
the
Corey.
damn ball mentality.
You're not getting that from Corey Davis.
No,
It's
you're
just
not.
in
And
his-
that's why he's not
in
number
his
one receiver.
DNA. But also,
I don't know many number one
Arthur
receivers that don't
Smith-
have that in them.
Arthur Smith used him exactly perfectly in Tennessee, and I think we discussed this on our old show. A new team's going to take him and say, I saw what he did in Tennessee, and now we can expand his repertoire. And I think what made him good was that they reduced his repertoire. So if the Jets take him, Hutt, and try to expand what he does into more, a number one receiver should be able to do everything, right? We can run him on more of these other routes. They're going to find out that, well, what he's really good at is what Tennessee had him do. And there's no shame in that.
No.
That's letting a player do what he does best and emphasizing it and maximizing it.
I mean, I'll do this coming up a bit later with Bud Dupree, but in his biggest games, does his team win or lose? Corey Davis had a career year last year, and his 2 biggest performances, the Titans lost. Now, that's not all on Corey Davis.
But it's notable. It's
But
worth
normally
mentioning.
when a top-tier wide receiver has a big performance, that's going to impact the scoreboard, and that's going to impact the bottom line at the end of the game. And
How was it for A.J. Brown? Do you know that?
much more successful.
Yeah, I imagine they
But
won.
the thing about Davis, though, is I don't honestly, he's not a number 1, but he's not a number 2. I think he's like a 1B.
Yeah.
And the question is, can you get more consistent play from him, game in and game out, as a 1B type player than what the Titans got out of
But do
him?
the Jets have a 1A?
They don't.
The Titans
But
very clearly had a 1A.
But they have the ability to spread it around, and we know how bad the Jets have been. You know.
Also,
Like,
who's his quarterback?
they've
That's
been
another
winless.
thing.
So
Who's
is
his
it
quarterback?
Is it wrong of me to knock down this Jets free agency haul a letter grade simply because it's the Jets that made the moves? Immediately, I see
think
these
it's
moves. I'm
fair.
like, I'm like you. I like Lawson. I like Davis for them, but then I think about it's the Jets that signed them.
it's a
So
far
something's
better coach.
off here.
Far better coach.
Something seems to be off here. If these guys are deciding
Yes.
to go to the Jets,
See-
and the Jets are picking them, it's going to be an
not
awkward
playing for
marriage.
Adam
You're
Gase.
leaving the Adam Gase stain, which is hard to remove. That's
It
hard
is.
to rub out, right? Some of this graffiti that was put on buildings during protests, that doesn't come out easy. That's like what Adam Gase did to the Jets. You can't get that off of there, no matter how you try
And
to
the
clear
Jets.
it.
I mean, it's just the Jets' history also.
Yeah, but
It's
Gase-
very unfair of me,
Gase made it-
granted, but
Gase
I
made
see
it-
that and I think, well, they're losers.
Yeah.
So these
Well,
guys are going to be losers
Gase
now.
made it
They're going to
exponentially
contribute to them losing. And
It's
that's-
what we're doing the opposite with the Patriots haul.
Right, the Patriots. Oh, well, this Bill Belichick guy, he
It'll
knows a
work.
thing or two. He's been around the block a few times.
Absolutely
He
true.
knows what he's doing. It's right. Yeah, it's inherent bias.
Hit us up at OutKick 360. Let us know your big takeaways from NFL free agency. We're going to hit the Titans in hour number 2 coming up in the Tennessee Power Hour, where we go more in depth, a layer or two deeper on what they did by signing Dupree and Autry and Lamb and bringing back Jeff Swaim, for instance. We'll get into all of that coming up.
I was just going to say, for all the national, local concerns about our show, today the Titans did us a favor and they were a national headline. So
Speaking of headlines, we get into the NCAA tournament when we come back, Chad. A discussion about some upsets in the brackets and what constitutes that.
An even bigger question to ponder, Hutton. Do upsets even exist?
This year.
We'll discuss. Any year. It's becoming that way. I'll let you know what I'm talking about with this when we come back.
I like
Nice.
it.
No double T's this time, just a single T.
Single T.
Hey, check us out wherever you may be watching each and every day right here on the OutKick OTT network. A reminder, if you've missed any of the show so far, or you missed the debut show yesterday, you can subscribe to our podcasts where we can be found on Spotify, on Apple, and where else, Paul? Where did you mention
Audible.
this morning?
Audible. Yeah,
Audible,
one of
the other
my
spot.
one of my followers on Facebook alerted me that we're on Audible. I had forgot about Audible as a channel.
You can also watch the replay on YouTube, on Twitter, wherever you may be watching. Facebook Live is the other. And if you are watching on YouTube, Chad, we ask that our viewers, our 360 season ticket holders, do us a favor.
It's not a big ask, but it helps us in a big way. Hit like. Takes 1 second to do that. Leave us a review. If you want to say something funny to us, that's always great, right? We love comedy. We love humor on this show. So just leave something there. Give us on whether it be podcast, YouTube, hit like, give us a rating, review it, subscribe. Do all those things. You'll help us out tremendously.
So we're kind of splitting up responsibilities in terms of monitoring things in Chad's on Twitter. So I said, hey, I'll get on YouTube and follow that. What's going to be my issue here on my screen, Hut?
Too small. The text is way too small for PK.
I'm going to have to blow that puppy up.
The squinting is about to happen.
So today we got a desk for Hutton. Tomorrow we'll have a projection screen behind our
magnifying
guys
glass.
here
I need
for
one of
Paul,
those big magnifying
because
sheets that I can
he's
put
the
in front.
elderly.
Look, I blew it up. I blew it up.
Paul the elderly member of our crew here. I can't see it, even with his readers on. Why do you have those glasses
blew it
on?
up.
If you can't, are those not readers?
They're readers.
Okay,
They help. It was still teeny tiny.
Then please tell us the problem.
It was still teeny tiny. I've blown it up now.
Here's the issue.
Command
New
plus.
readers. That's what Paul needs now. He's
Command
going to see
plus.
it. Okay.
It was microscopic.
Sure. All right.
He's got it
test.
now.
He's got it now.
Check us out at OutKick.com. You can also sign up to become a VIP. Join us on Friday for the basketball watch party, the VIP watch party with OutKick. We cannot wait to get out to 6th and Peabody right here in Nashville. Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. And as a part of our show on Friday, we're going to give our top parlays through FanDuel as to what we're going to sign up for with FanDuel.com/OK360. The $50 risk-free bet where there will be underdogs, but will there be upsets?
Vegas will have underdogs. But what is the nature of the upset in the NCAA tournament now? Of course, numerically, right? Numbers, the higher the number, the lower percentage chance of winning in the first round.
You're talking seed.
Yes, the number of seeds. So the only one where the lower seed, if you're talking about, it's 9 versus 8. The 9 seed is beating the 8 seed more than the 8 seed is beating the 9 seed. That's it. The 5-12 matchup has basically become an 8-9 game or 7-10 game in recent years. An example, Tennessee is a 7-point favorite over Oregon State. That is the biggest point spread of 5 versus 12. 7 whole points. That's it.
Explain why the 5-12. There's a conference champion thing involved there.
Well,
There's
it's just
the last of the big conference at large.
Not necessarily, because that's either an 11 or a 12. You know, you've got other examples of the 12 seed typically is going to be a non-power conference team that's really good, that's a champion, a Belmont in a great year, taking on a good Power 5 team as the 5 seed. Tennessee, Oregon State's a good example. That's a Power 5 conference tournament champion playing Tennessee, another Power 5 team. But my point of this is, if you look at where college basketball has gone, especially in a pandemic year, who suffered this year? Duke, Kentucky. Why do they suffer with all that talent? Zero continuity. They had no guys returning to play with each other. A lot of new guys coming in, freshmen, went out there. They couldn't even make the tournament, right? The teams that do well are the teams with senior leaders, with continuity, that have a system. Oftentimes, these are the mid-major champions in these games.
Because those guys don't leave.
But even when you get a Syracuse, let's say, or Michigan State, if Michigan State wins against UCLA, Michigan State is an 11. You get these Power 5 conference teams that are 11 or 12 seeds, no one's going to be surprised if they go on. If Michigan State goes on and beats BYU as a 6 seed, no one's going to be surprised. I guess my point is that as college basketball, there's so many good players out there, and they all can't go to Duke, Kentucky, Indiana, and the Blue Bloods. So they're spread out. But as college basketball has gotten better and the wealth has been spread across more teams, the idea of the huge first-round upset has gone way down. 16 over a 1, obviously a big deal. Only happened once. 15 over a 2, obviously a big deal. Doesn't happen that often. But when you get to 14 over 3 or 13 over 4, and then especially 12 over a 5, the upsets just aren't going to happen as much. And in this year, where you have teams that didn't play as many games as the other ones, I think it's even less so. Look, this is what's going to make it fun. It's going to be a wide-open tournament. But I don't think there's a ton of eye-opening upsets that are out there simply because I see some of these teams that could win in the first round. It wouldn't be that surprising to me.
Here are two for you in this context. St. Bonaventure, which had a tough matchup in LSU, all junior starters. So these guys have been together a ton. And UCSB, who we talked about a little bit yesterday, loaded with upperclassmen. So again, school that's not going to produce a lot of pros, that has guys that have been together for a long time. So the pandemic doesn't necessarily throw them off course because they know each other well. And the thing that Duke and Kentucky suffered through, they didn't really get hit by in the same way. Now, I don't know that you're going to see an upset. UCSB is 12. That's the kind of game that teams win. St. Bonaventure upsetting
That's a game,
LSU
by the way, that pretty
much
everyone is picking.
Big thing. Santa Barbara, I picked. I can't remember who they're playing.
We've joked about Winthrop. Winthrop is a game that a lot of people are going to pick.
Who are they
UCSB
playing?
is another one.
Creighton?
Winthrop.
UCSB Creighton? That's it.
Yes, and Winthrop plays Villanova, who's without their point guard. Loyola Chicago, another good example. They're led by Cameron Krutwig, Lucas Richardson, two seniors who were starters on the Sister Jean team that went to the Final Four as freshmen. So 3 years later, those guys have been around. They're leading that program. Is anyone going to be shocked if Loyola beats Georgia Tech in the first round and gives Illinois all they want in round 2 as a 1 seed? I'm not going to be.
One of the things I'm interested to see and
Clark
watch.
Kellogg, by the way, thought that Loyola was way underseeded.
Yeah.
For the tournament, everyone's got their eyes on Iona as a 15 over a 2 against Alabama. My question is, does Alabama, who's played 30 games, how much does it factor in that Iona's played 18 this season? The other one would be Colgate. Colgate and Arkansas. Arkansas's played, 28 games on the season? Colgate's played 16? Maybe not even that. Maybe 15 or 14.
It's a good question on the wear and tear.
I think the hardest thing with that, Hutton, is trying to decide if you're the committee where to slot those teams from a seed standpoint.
Yeah.
Because we could sit here and argue, what's the value of that? Are you rested? If you've played 16 or 18 games as opposed to 30, does that give you an advantage? Or are you at a disadvantage because you don't have the experience of playing together that a team that played 30 games might have?
And Colgate was ridiculously high seeded in one of those things based on who teams it beat or something like that.
Yeah, their net was top 10, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
And they end up with a 14 seed.
So that shows you how much net means.
Hey, so the Jags are signing Seahawks corner Shaquille Griffin. That's a 3-year deal with $29 million guaranteed, according to Adam Schefter. That's big money for for the top corner in Seattle off their defense. They were making a push to bring him back, and the guaranteed money is what has him headed to Jacksonville.
There was a tweet that Jacksonville had signed Curtis Samuel yesterday. Now, it was tweeted by a nobody. Now, I've gotten burned by this before, so I want to see how much forgiveness you'll give me. I saw it. I didn't look at the original tweet because it was retweeted by several legitimate people, including our buddy John Glennon. So I saw John Glennon retweeted it and commented very thoroughly on the value of Samuel.
Yeah.
And I retweeted it. Then I quickly saw it was a mistake and I got rid of it. And then I quickly texted him and said, "Did you delete that tweet?" And he jokingly texted me back, No, big move. But this tweet somehow got like a dozen legitimate NFL reporters. And it wasn't a disguised tweet or anything. It was from some nobody. So I don't know how this is still going on, but at least I had the cover of legitimate people retweeting it I wasn't the first legitimate person to retweet it, like the Dante Hightower fiasco.
This isn't like the Adam Scheffler tweet that you retweeted or that you read on air one time?
GD Scheffler.
Scheffler. No, it's Chef 1 or something, right?
The Chef 1 ER. It looked like
Chef 1
Scheffler.
ER.
Not the former Broncos tight end, but it was you thought it was Adam Schefter, but it was Chef 1 ER.
Coming up, the Tennessee Power Hour is straight ahead, which also includes some of the biggest news in NFL free agency over the first day of the open negotiating period, where the Titans have agreed with Bud Dupree and Denico Autry. Details next, right here on OutKick 360 on the OutKick OTT network. Stay with us. It's the Tennessee Power Hour with OutKick 360 on the OutKick OT network. Alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharsky, I'm Jonathan Hutton. Glad you're with us as we begin day 2 of the Power Hour. If you're just joining us, we're going to do this each day. A dedicated hour to Tennessee headlines and all of the biggest sports across the state. And we begin with NFL free agency and the Tennessee Titans, the big splash, and a big need addressed with Bud Dupree as the big signing on day number 1 of the open negotiating period across the league. The Titans, John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, they had to go and address their pass rush, which was just abysmal last year. And they go and do it.
It's not been good, really, during their whole term in terms of guys who could win one-on-ones and go rush the quarterback. And so when it's been decent, it's been schemed decent.
And now they go and make it a priority, which they had to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to fans out there, I mean, there were suicidal fans 6 hours into the pre-negotiating period. I tweeted last night. You know, an hour ago you were suicidal, and now you have Denico Autry and Bud Dupree. You know, relax.
And it's been worse in past years for them.
Well, I mean, when you lose all of your free agents, I can understand a little bit of concern for a moment until you see them do something.
I mean, look at the Colts. The Colts have a ton of free agent money. They haven't done anything yet. You think they're going to wind up with nothing? They'll be fine too.
FanDuel Sportsbook is the place for Tennessee residents to place a wager on any sport or market during the week leading through this coming Thursday. $50 risk-free bet available right now. FanDuel.com/OK360. FanDuel.com/OK360. That's how you can place a wager on any sport or market during the promo period. If your bet loses, you get the refund in site credit. And then again, that's up to $50 right now with FanDuel. We recommend doing it on the tournament, but you can place a bet tonight wherever you'd like on any sport. $50 risk-free across the state of Tennessee. Again, the website, FanDuel.com/OK360.
Got to use it by Thursday night, is that right?
Thursday, yep. Thursday,
Yeah.
right as the tournament gets underway.
Get it. Well, the first 4 is Thursday.
The tournament.
That's when the tournament gets underway.
Yeah, well,
There are
you know,
68 teams in the
a
tournament.
lot of people take that
Thursday
very
at 4
serious. A
o'clock.
lot of people take that very seriously.
Bud Dupree. Let's get in and go a layer or two deeper here with the signing. With it, all the sack numbers for all these top flight pass rushers, we see these 10.5 sacks for Carl Lawson over the last 2 years, 19.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons for Bud Dupree. What does that mean? Because you can have a Vic Beasley type year where Vic Beasley had a monster season. What was the season that he had, Paul? It was his second year in the league. He had
It was a Super Bowl year.
He had a 15.5 sack season. 6.5 of those came in 2 games with big leads. No one pointed that out. Right? Like, you
Or
can
clean
pad
up sack
stats.
or coverage sack.
So I want to know, are these coming first half, second half? Is he playing with a lead or is he not? And just looking at what Dupree did. Now, again, he had the ACL injury. It happened December 2nd of 2020. It was
Week
the Wednesday
12.
night game where they had to play against Baltimore with all the rescheduling going on.
Second half, week 12.
19.5 sacks over the last 2 years, which still ranks 8th among all players at his position. In comparison here, Harold Landry is top 5 in hurries, but he doesn't land a lot of sacks. He has 14.5, for instance, compared to Dupree, who's played in less games and has played less snaps. But when I think the key here is on the hurries, he's the opposite. Very few pressures, but he has a great home run rate when you dig through the numbers with the 19.5 sacks. When he gets to the quarterback, he wins.
Finishes.
He wins. He's not getting the hurry, he's getting the sack. They're 2 different types of players, and I'm not trying to compare one or the other, and I'm not trying to compare the players around either player either.
Good. They need
it's better in
different
Pittsburgh.
than Landry.
Better in Pittsburgh. But the Titans now have a physical front with Jeffrey Simmons, Denico Autry, who they bring in, who is just, if you haven't watched him play, he's long arms, big, tall guy. I think he's 6'4", 6'5". Physical player who beat up the Titans' interior offensive line in both matchups.
Titans fans should know who he is because he's done very well against them.
And the Titans, by the way, like to sign guys who play well against them. This is a habit.
Well, rightfully so. I mean, again, he fits that. He's done that. And then now you have Dupree and Landry on the outside. They've got a little knockback to their defensive front now. You know, there's not a player you point to and say, you know, here comes the finesse. That this defense is not going to be known for that.
No.
And that's what we pointed out about Butler leaving. He was not finesse with his play, and I think they've bolstered that area now with Dupree, who is, you know, he certainly a physical pass rusher when we're discussing the type of player he is.
Yeah, and talking about finishing, Autry had 20 sacks in 3 years with the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty big number for, in the Titan system, a defensive end. I mean, he can finish and deliver.
Oh, let's put that in comparison. Jarrell Casey, his final 3 years, had 18 sacks in 3 years.
There you go.
So he's better than Casey at getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, comparable.
That
least.
that is the comp. That's what
And
they lack.
How much does that push? Now he's surrounded by Landry, Dupree, and right next to Autry. I would hope that would push Jeffrey Simmons to really develop the pass rush part of his game, which people in Nashville, because they really like Jeffrey Simmons, who's a great guy and big-time run player and made some great plays against the run, similar to Rashaan Evans in how impactful he is in goal line short yardage stuff, and make some big tackles for a loss, but really did not develop as a penetrating player.
But just having Autry there is going to help him.
Right.
Even if he doesn't develop a great pass rush game, the pass rush game he possesses now will be helped by the fact he's got Denico Autry on his defensive line.
And they need to develop him in that. First round
Right.
pick, defensive tackle, if you're going to be listed with the guys who are first-round pick defensive tackle caliber guys, you got to have a well-rounded game. Playing next to Denico Autry and practicing with Denico Autry, I would think you learn some tricks of the trade there. But also, Titans have to continue to develop some of these guys. And last year, there was a pause button on a lot of that. We saw some of it. Tier Tart developed, right?
Well, now he doesn't have to play the nose. He can play. He's more of a swing guy. He can play that role now. Tier Tart. He doesn't have to be pinned in. And where they need development is with Laurel Murchison. You know,
Yes. But they could slow down what they ask.
He needs to show more.
If he doesn't show more,
They still need to go get an outside guy. They're going to add another one.
at least.
They need another inside guy late in the draft for depth purposes.
Right. But if you could count on Tart,
and then linebacker,
and you
and
don't
corner.
play a nose that much, and you can count on Tart, then maybe Daquan Jones is now gone.
In my mind, I have
Parted ways.
with him based on my planning purposes. It'd be great to have him back.
Yeah. So the only guy you foresee now a chance at might be Jayon Brown, and Jayon Brown's going to
I don't
get
think
$12
Jayon's
million
back.
a year. So
Nope.
they're all gone.
I don't think Jayon
I mean,
Brown's
Jeff
back.
Swain.
Matt
now we're
Milano got
talking
what,
second year.
$11 million a year?
12,
12?
I think.
I don't think Jayon draws that.
I think he does draw that. Though no whispers about him yesterday doesn't.
I don't
bode
think he
great.
draws that, but I don't think he's back here.
I think he might be better than Milano in this regard. Milano, who I like a lot, requires a defensive line to keep him clean. And Jayon can do some things even if, we know this defensive line didn't necessarily keep him clean all of the time. But it's conceivable the Titans lose all four. They've already lost two. And now there are other two big free agents in Daquan Jones and, blanking out.
Jayon Brown?
And Desmond King. Three big ones left. I'm leaving Jadeveon Clowney out. We talked about that yesterday. I don't care about him.
Yeah.
And now you're on to guys like Swain, who's already back.
What is the big picture? What is the message if you lose everyone in free agency? Some of it's a calculated decision by the Titans, too. And I'm looking at this from both sides. All of your guys that you drafted or brought in
let's
leave.
go through them.
And also, if you decide, if it's your decision, we're not really going to try hard to re-sign these guys. What does it say about your team?
I think it's not a group; it's the individual player.
Let's go one by one.
They're not re-signing Corey Davis to $14 million a year.
That's
because
fine.
next offseason they're going to sign A.J. Brown to an extension.
Yeah.
They're not going to. They don't have a fifth-year option with him.
So it's time for a rookie in that role.
That's right.
With a lot of these, it's either or, right? You're talking about A.J. Brown coming up for contract a year from now. So you're fine with letting Corey Davis walk for that money.
That's an unquestioned decision.
Yes.
There.
So let's keep going down the list.
You get a rookie. I would like a veteran maybe as the third, but you get a rookie. This is a back-to-back now, good wide receiver class. I would have liked them to have gotten one last year so that he was seasoned a little bit. Mm-hmm. But receiver is going to consistently replenish in the draft also. There's going to be a good receiver class almost every year. And this year, I think it's a draft priority.
Jonnu Smith is a big loss for this offense. I think he's not back because they signed Derrick Henry last year. Most teams don't re-sign their veteran running backs to a contract extension and pay big money. They go through the draft and go cheap. And they wear their back out, and then they go get another one. I think they made the investment in the backfield, and that's why you're not seeing investment in free agency at the receiver position at tight end. So that's offense. Defensively,
They would have
I
wanted
think
to
he's
keep Jonnu Smith, but they didn't have the money available because of the Henry contract.
I would like to think so.
yeah,
And
I mean, it's almost
think-
identical money.
I think too many fans, too, are making it like, Ferkser's restricted. They're going to keep him. They've gotten Swain back. Hopefully they get Pruitt and they'll be fine. They're telegraphing what they're doing now with these guys on the field, and you need two guys to do one job that Jonnu Smith can do. I think it hurts them badly on that front, but I don't know that they're going to shop now for a veteran. Maybe they draft one if they can take care of a lot of these other holes in free agency, but I don't know how many you can. It's still a long list.
It's going to be tough to replace him. Now, Jayon Brown, you're not franchise tagging him for inside linebacker money for that position. And you're also, I mean, all this is cap related. which is why they had to cut Malcolm Butler and Kenny Vaccaro.
Right.
Vaccaro, I think, would have been cut anyway.
And Daquan Jones.
Hold on, let's slow down a little.
Okay.
So Jayon Brown, part of it, how serviceable do they think David Long is? You and I agree, but it's a drop off. But it was functional last year. There were a lot of other problems.
David Long's a backup player.
I agree. And then
So why not sign Jayon Brown? Let's take the franchise part of the way.
It's very expensive. But losing him really hurts in this regard. Next year you're going to need another one because Rashaan Evans is not an answer.
Chad, you can't re-sign Jayon Brown because you swung and missed last year on Jadeveon Clowney. And when I say Clowney, that was injury. But not the sack production. Vic Beasley.
Laziness.
Yeah, gone. So you have some salary cap issues, and then your investments that you made did not pan out. So you have to make your investments on getting to the passer. That was the key cog that was missing from this team last year and why they didn't go deeper.
So the two guys so far, I'm going down the list. We're going through the checklist of free agents that are leaving. Two of the guys the Titans would love to have, Jonnu Smith, Jayon Brown. One, they don't have.
Let's keep going. But
that's next. Just the three we talked about. One they don't have because the Derrick Henry contract, which no Titans fan is going to be pissed off about that because they want Derrick Henry here. But that's the opportunity cost. Now Jonnu Smith's out the door. Jayon Brown was simply a function of bad deals done a year ago on defense. That's why you can't keep him?
Conceivably. But here's the other thing.
Conceivably or?
Well,
yes.
I get what he's saying about Derrick Henry.
There's no way you can resign.
There are other things. You could say the Derrick Henry money cost you Corey Davis. It's not a direct one for one, but I get why you're.
The Corey Davis we all agree on. That's fine.
You're not paying two top-tier wide receivers.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown cancels out Corey Davis.
Yeah.
Jonnu Smith is canceled out because of the deal they gave to their running back.
Now, on the Jayon Brown thing, here's the big problem going forward. Because David Long hasn't panned out to the degree they had hoped, and he's a sixth-round pick. You would have had to really hit.
Well, Jayon's a fifth.
But they hit consecutively on Avery Williamson, who then Jayon Brown was better. You'd like to be hitting on those picks. But they're going to need to replace Jayon Brown now, and in a year they're going to need to replace Rashaan Evans. Now, you can't spend a ton of money on inside linebackers. They're generally replaceable parts, but they need good bodies in there to function. And one of them needs to be able to cover very well in today's league. And the other one needs to be more versatile than Rashaan Evans is, who's very limited. Not smart enough.
They have to get better.
That's a problem position on this football team.
They've got to get better behind the ball at linebacker. With speed, which is what they lacked when Brown went out. And they need some versatility. The thing that has been so weird, bizarre, however you want to term, is Rashaan Evans has not been the player in the pass rush that we thought he would be coming out of college.
No. And when they rush him, it's only from that inside position. They never put him out to the edge,
Yeah.
and they're not going to. It's not going to happen.
So I do
That
think
ship has sailed.
I think they're still interested in bringing in a free agent at the position.
They have to be. And they probably have to draft one. Though, again, we keep putting things into the draft basket. They only have so many picks.
Right.
And, again, you're going to have to develop those later round guys. They're not going to come in great. Inside linebacker is a position of concern now and next year.
Well, and then now Denico Autry is signed, so you're not paying Daquan Jones the type of money that he's going to get elsewhere to pay next to Jeffrey Simmons.
He's averaged $7 million over his last contract, and he's estimated to make like 7.2, 7.5, so he'd stay the same. I think he's been a good leader, and he's very good at what he does, but I don't think you could pay him $7 million a year now for that with Autry coming on board.
Hit us up on Twitter, OutKick360. That's how you communicate with us. Let us know what you want to hear about, questions you may have. A lot of questions coming in about wide receiver with the Titans.
Let's get into it.
We can certainly discuss that, and a little Vols talk.
Let's go one more free agent, Desmond King. Now, you cut Butler. You're counting on Adoree Jackson, who I would qualify as a head case. You're counting on Christian Fulton. Look, he was hurt last year, so it was a disastrous year for him. He missed, I think, 7 games. But you got to give him the benefit of the doubt that a second rounder is going to play like a second rounder. You can't bolster his position, right? You've already got enough work to do. You got to replace Butler. Desmond King wasn't as good as he was with the Chargers, but I think if you got him back, you'd get some continuity there. He's not quite as fast. He's not as fast as you want. When they talked about it being a more horizontal position, that's part of why you let Logan Ryan go.
Yes.
I liked Cam Sutton as a potential replacement who might have been cheaper. Cam Sutton re-signed with Pittsburgh. Mike Hilton from Pittsburgh is an option. There are some guys out there that might be better or as good as Desmond King. I think Desmond King would be a good guy to have back, though, because you still have to go get another cornerback, at least for depth. And all of these guys at the tail end, Kareem Orr, Ty Smith, you've got to flush that out and bring in new guys who have higher ceilings.
They won't be able to do that with everyone, but I know exactly what you're saying.
I mean, how long do the guys like that stick around? How long does Matt Dickerson stick around? Let's recycle that. Let's see them recycle that.
For what price, though? It's going to be tough this year. It's tough for every team not to.
Well, I'm not saying you have to go get veterans. Let's see the undrafted free agents. Let's see the bottom barrel free agents out there who you say, I can identify a trait in that guy and we can do something with that. Let's see more churn. Last year wasn't a churny year, granted, because of COVID and all of that.
Right.
But I said over and over, like, why are they not, with 16-man practice squads around the league, plucking a couple guys that they really liked in the draft?
We didn't see much of that across the league last year.
I know.
Which was
The
weird.
Titans should have been at the forefront of that, I felt like. Maybe there's a gentleman's agreement. Hey, we're not going to do it. They did it with the long snapper.
No gentleman's agreement.
No.
But they did it
There will
with
be
the
no
long
gentleman's
snapper.
agreement on this show. I'll tell you that much. Because we are not gentlemen.
But they did it with a long snapper. They went and got a long snapper off the Jaguars roster, right? And
Yes.
they kept him on their roster for 3 weeks because you have to keep a guy on the
All
roster
is
for
fair.
3 weeks when you get him from a practice squad. And they kept 2 long snappers on their roster for 3 weeks in order to get this guy to have long snapper insurance. And they did it at long snapper, but they couldn't go find an extra cornerback that they wanted to upgrade with. It was very weird to me.
A lot more coming. We will get into Kendall Lamb, who they signed as a swing player on the offensive line. We will discuss that and more. Plus, Chad has yet to react, since we've had this long layoff, to Josh Heupel.
What's the bid up to? Guy pledged $5 yesterday to hear me talk about it. Can we get that up?
Yeah.
Oh, they did. Someone did pay to hear you speak on Heupel. Was it? Do you know who this was?
No, I have no clue. I would say give the money to
Did you get the
Lindsey
$5?
Lindsey Reed's GoFundMe account.
Did you get the $5?
But we should keep it going. I mean, can we last until May if we can raise some money for Lindsey Reed's GoFundMe account? I'm all
coming
for
up,
it.
our silence on Josh Heupel continues.
You're asking me on Twitter to talk about Josh Heupel in Tennessee. I will wait until May. No, I'm kidding. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Yeah, hit us up in the meantime on Twitter at OutKick360. OutKick 360 and the Tennessee Power Hour rolls on here on the OutKick OTT network. I just said OutKick Kick. OutKick OTT.
It's actually
network.
not a bad name for a show.
OutKick Kick.
We're workshopping a few things. So that's one of the names we're going to try
There you
out.
go.
The OutKick
No,
Kick.
it's not.
No, it tested well though.
Blackbird is where we're located. Blackbird Studio. Check out the Blackbird Academy if you're into audio engineering, if you want to go to school for this, if you want to there you go, Chad. If you want to be live
Camera
for
one,
a concert,
camera two.
if you want to produce in studio for some of the biggest artists, you can check out theblackbirdacademy.com for more information, and they'll hook you up with great education and a job in the industry you want to be in. Again, check out theblackbirdacademy.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up,
Like us. You
rate,
really like
subscribe to our podcast channel as well. That's where you can find us each and every day.
It's really easy to do, and if you do it, you're going to help us out tremendously. So we appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up. If you like what you hear, give us a review. Give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And we are available every day. If you're listening live or watching live right now, we're going to be on podcast shortly after our show every day, so available for your drive home. Hit us up on Twitter, OutKick360, best way to get in touch with us. We announced earlier David Reed is back.
Yes, he
He is back, baby. He is back where he belongs with us on this show with OutKick, OutKick360, and he is monitoring our Facebook page, and he'll be letting us know what we're seeing there. But best way to communicate with us, Twitter. And we have a question on Twitter.
We're not too proud to ask for these likes and such. And on Twitter, feel free to retweet the show.
Yes.
Retweet, review, all of these basic things. So
I think
we're going to ingrain that in you.
This is not rocket science to tell you that we love interacting with our audience and getting feedback from our audience. This is every show that does anything like what we do. So please give us feedback. Let us know what you're thinking. Give us questions. Spark conversation that way. We're having a conversation about Titans free agents. Mm-hmm. And we got in that last segment about opportunity cost. One decision begats another decision. You sign this guy, that means this guy's out the door a year from now. You don't sign this guy, then you can re-sign a guy next year. Randy on Twitter asked Hutton a question. Jonathan, why will you not say that the signing of Clowney cost the Titans the ability to sign Jonnu? Why the focus on the Henry contract being the reason they couldn't sign Jonnu?
Well, Clowney's contract counted last year.
Well,
Henry's counts this year too.
If you
That's the difference.
If you didn't sign Clowney last year, yes, the money would have carried over. But they need a body last year, and they had to try to win last year. And we all thought, look, it's easy to have hindsight and say Clowney didn't deliver. But at the time, it was completely reasonable to go get Jadeveon Clowney and think that while he might not deliver a lot of sacks, we expected more than 0, but while he might not deliver a lot of sacks,
he was so disruptive, Paul.
He would be impactful on the line.
If you don't get the impact this guy makes on a football game, then you don't know football.
But look, when the time
Stop
came,
emphasizing sacks,
when the
Paul.
time
My
came,
God, look at him set the edge on that play. Wow.
When
Why
the
did we
time
pay that guy
came-
that money?
When the time came, a lot of teams wanted him. Cleveland was interested in
Yeah.
him. Cleveland was a good football team. Seattle was thinking about it. New Orleans' name cropped
That
up.
doesn't excuse the decision.
I think at the
When you
time
do
it was a
something and it
reasonable
fails,
decision.
it's a failure.
Sure, it's a failure.
I'm sure there was some dumbass team thinking about drafting Isaiah
But
Wilson,
what this
too.
guy is saying is they should
And I'm not going to say, the Jets thought about drafting him early in the second, so that excuses
But
it.
Chad, what this guy is saying is they shouldn't have spent that money and they should have
No,
saved
he's
it
not saying
this
that.
year.
No. This
Yes.
is an Alabama fan, Randy, on Twitter, he's thinking of it in terms of why is Hutton blaming Jonnu Smith leaving on the Henry contract?
Well, that money isn't available.
Why don't you blame it on the Clowney
that
contract?
money isn't available this year unless you don't sign
But
Clowney
Hutton is saying
last
they're
year.
not signing they're not signing Jayon Brown this year, in part because of the failures
No,
of
I
the
said Jonnu
Beasley.
Smith.
But you have to not sign Clowney last year to have that money this year.
I asked Hutton, why not Jayon Brown? And he said, because of Jadeveon Clowney and Beasley last year. So then the question is, if you're talking about this year and not counting, he's saying because the failures of those signings, they don't have the money to sign him.
No, they have to. It's not just one or the other, though. They have to go address the pass rush.
Right.
So they're not, and they do that with multiple players. Not Clowney. It's the fact that they're not bringing Clowney or Beasley back this year after the contracts that they signed because they didn't work out. That they have to go address that in free agency with Bud Dupree. That they have to go sign Denico Autry, right? Like,
well, if Beasley or Clowney had panned out, they would have re-signed them, and it would have cost maybe not Dupree money, but close to it.
Right, sure. But Beasley was more than just a one-year contract, right?
No, it's 1 year.
Oh, both were. Yeah, you're right. So, but looking at Henry and comparing Henry and Jonnu to the guy's question, normally I'm comparing the running back because normally you don't re-sign the veteran running back. So that's not the trend across the NFL. So when you bring and you pay a running back, you're losing
money from the pool.
Money for another playmaker.
And Randy,
I don't blame them for that. That's a great decision.
Don't confuse that with us saying they shouldn't have signed Henry for the money. It's just
it's a great decision.
When you do that, then you're not going to have the luxury of going in and getting Jonnu Smith a year later, is what we're saying.
Also, another picking up on that, a big misconception I'm seeing on social media is the idea, well, the Titans are trading defense for offense, as if they're not going to do anything on offense. And again, tight end, there's still going to need to be at least something. Maybe it's Michael Pruitt. Wide receiver, if you think they're not going to do anything, you're insane. Now, it might not be Samuel. It might not be a big-ticket free agent, but they are going to invest resources at wide receiver. They have to.
Do you think they're going to be as good on offense this year, based on personnel?
When
all said and done?
I think they probably come down a little bit in offense and move up on defense. But I don't think they're sitting in their office saying, we have to sacrifice goodness on offense in order to get better on defense.
I don't think that, but I do think they're not saying – guys, we were great on offense this year and we sucked on defense. Now we're going to flip-flop. We're going to suck on offense and be great on defense. It's not that trade-off, but I do agree with Titans Twitter or whoever who's saying they're taking from offense and giving to defense to balance it out a little bit.
One day.
But that offense, I mean, yes, they're going to make offensive moves, but I have a hard time believing they're going to match personnel from a year ago with losing Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis, the failure of Isaiah Wilson, and the residual effect of that.
That one burns.
Well, the whole
thing. What if
thing.
they got Jefferson in the draft? This year's version of Jefferson would be better than Corey Davis.
Well, they had a chance to get. Well, maybe he went right before them. But either way, I mean,
my
point being,
you could get a first
they could have had Justin Jefferson a year ago.
Now,
didn't Justin Jefferson go 30th to Minnesota?
No, I think he went higher.
Yeah, but either way, yes, you could get that. But it's still
maybe
tough
we're
for
dead
me
wrong.
to.
I can't remember.
Still tough for me to
envision. I was in my garage.
Yeah, that's right. Illegally, by the way. Violating all sorts of protocols. But you look at that, I can't imagine, not that the Titans are going to be bad, but I can't imagine their offense, with whatever moves they're going to make, draft and free agency, that we're going to look up and say, they're better having drafted, even after drafting Isaiah Wilson and having to get rid of him and losing Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis. They're still better on offense with whatever they do from here on out.
But also, you can't yet say they're reallocating the money in some wild fashion because what Bud Dupree is making is Jadeveon Clowney plus a piece of Vic Beasley.
But they're reallocating money right now in a year where the cap's gone down significantly.
Sure.
That's the difference to last year to this year.
And I'm not saying
they're gonna the next piece is going to be rearranging some of the money that players are currently under with their contracts with restructuring. I mean, that's the next piece.
I don't know what they're waiting for.
They have what, $10 million in cap space right now, roughly?
Maybe as much as 12. Spotrac.
Now, the key with this is for now, it's your top 51 players on your roster.
Yeah.
You're not at that number until the Tuesday of or the Monday of.
Right, and those will be two minimum contracts, so that's not
September.
that much of a.
But you have to make room for your draft class that you're going to bring in, your undrafted free agents.
$7 million.
But all of that doesn't count against your cap until the season starts and you make your final count. So right now, there's a deadline coming up for the top 51 players. That's what everybody's looking at.
That's tomorrow at 3 Central.
So how do they go about making room if they want to add more pieces to that for the top 51? They would have to do that through some restructuring, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Ryan Tannehill could save them $20 million with the restructure. I mean, that alone can do everything. And Ryan Tannehill's going to play through the 3 years of this contract. That's not a question. And I learned, and I wrote this at my website, and This is a massive misconception about restructures that I and virtually every NFL writer in the country has echoed for all of time. A restructure does not amount to writing, in most cases, a restructure does not amount to writing a check and handing it to the guy at the moment of the restructure. I talked to somebody who absolutely knows the ins and the outs of this. And a restructure, there is language in almost every contract at the time of signing, basic language, that if you restructure an NFL contract for accounting purposes, which amounts to shifting base salary to bonus for accounting purposes, which lets you then prorate that bonus money over the life of the contract, which severely reduces the cap number for this year and gives you salary cap room, you are still paid that money the same way you would be paid the regular money over the course of the year. So nothing really changes for the player. But in terms of him doing a favor, he's not doing anything except the team is exercising something it's allowed to exercise in the contract language. So all that happens is he's informed that we are exercising this piece of the language in your contract, and this money now that was base salary is now signing bonus salary, and you're paid the same way on the same timetable.
But you know you're getting that signing bonus money, right, as a player.
Yeah, if you were
Whereas in the
cut
league,
or
if you're
something.
getting
But
money
you're
in
not
year
getting
5,
Right. But you're clearly not getting cut, and it's all this season
Right.
that you're getting the money. Now, the pay schedule changes this year. Most teams in the league, the Titans don't do it this way, pay 1/17 of your salary every 17 weeks. This year in the new CBA, starting in 2021, if it's let's say it's an 18-week season, 17 games over 18 weeks, 18 times 2, so 36 weeks, you get paid over 36 weeks. And that's was designed so guys maybe don't blow their money and and have it kind of more spread out income over the course of
what
the
a problem
year.
to have.
More. That's kind of an Isaiah Wilson rule.
Right. Sorry, we have to protect you against your own stupidity. Justin Jefferson, 22nd overall, by the way.
So there you go. In
was not an
range,
option
in
for
range
the
of
Titans.
them this year.
Right there, though.
That kind of
Right.
guy in range of them this year.
Hit us up at OutKick 360. Coming up, Chad's going to give us the Josh Heupel discussion. That's just around the corner. First, though, Paul, you gave a thumbs down to Kendall Lamb signing as a backup swing tackle here with the Titans. Your thoughts on Lamb, who's a former Texan who has been with the Cleveland Browns?
I mean, I think he's fine as a depth guy. I don't know that he's a guy that's going to come in and put any pressure on Dennis Kelly in a competition for right tackle, which ideally you'd like. And
He can play
that's
guard,
out the
too, if they
window-
needed him,
Out
but-
the window with the Isaiah Wilson fiasco.
Yep.
So, he's Ty Sambrailo's replacement, who's a free agent. And
Sambrilo wasn't getting that money.
No. So, I mean, they consider him clearly an upgrade from Sambrilo.
He's
more
getting a little
flexible,
less
like
than
you're
what
saying.
Kelly got last year, when the intent was Isaiah Wilson would
Would
eventually
overtake him.
take that spot. That's why you drafted him in the first round, right?
I feel like my interpretation of this is he's the third guy, maybe a swing guy, but if I'm Dennis Kelly, I'm not. Dennis Kelly's going to sweat everything, and he's a pro and all of that. But I'm not looking at this move thinking, boy, I'm really on the hot seat over this. The way I
Tackle-
was when they drafted Isaiah Wilson in the first round.
Tackle ended up being a pretty hot topic last year too, with the injury to Lewan.
Oh,
Lewan, and then we know Kelly's best on the right side.
Yeah.
Then they don't have their first round pick pan out. Then they have an injury to Sambrilo, right? So all these.
Pleasantbury place. This line's in terrific shape now. I mean, if things don't necessarily carry over from one year to the next. But the offensive line, in terms of pass protection and clearly blocking for a guy who ran for 2,027 yards, was terrific last year. Jonnu Smith was a big piece of that. And
I was going to bring up the run game for Lamb too, because you could bring him in as that jumbo
that extra
package.
guy, and he's caught a touchdown.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly.
on the line's caught a touchdown. But now, with Lewan back, that line gets better. And I would feel very good about the Titans' offensive line. And I feel very good, obviously, about the Titans at running back, where you have Henry Evans now back, presumably healthy and able to do the things we talked about after the draft last year, which we never really got to see because he was so hurt. McNichols is under contract. Blasingame re-signed. There you are. You've got 3 running backs and a fullback. Here's one position we don't have to talk about.
Coming up, I think Chad is going to take a very leveled, a very level approach to a head coaching hire in the SEC.
And
I'm going to do something that Tennessee fans never do.
Okay.
Take a leveled approach. It's never happened for a Vols fan, ever.
And I'm going to laugh at the Vols fan, which a lot of non-Vols fans do to Vols fans.
We've got Josh Heupel takeaways, which we have not reacted to since the coaching search. We discussed that coming up on the Tennessee Power Hour, OutKick 360 on the OutKick OTT network. NCAA Watch Party coming up with OutKick VIPs this Friday. We will be at 6th and Peabody in Asheville. If you're an OutKick VIP, you can find details there on the top bar of the website, OutKick.com. It is OutKick 360. Day number 2 is here on the OutKick OTT network. It's been a great show number 2. About to wrap things up for the afternoon. I want to remind you, speaking of Friday and all week, up until Thursday when the tournament tips off, FanDuel has got you on a $50 risk-free bet. FanDuel.com/OK360. All the details there, risk-free. We suggest going big, loading up, and making sure you've got the parlay going, because if you win, you can really cash in. If you lose, you're going to get the $50 back, up to $50 back in site credit. So again, check that out, FanDuel.com/OK360. And if you're watching OK360, we hope you enjoyed. And if you are, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, retweet it for us, share everything we're doing. And as we begin the new journey here on the OTT network.
Part of our job in the beginning, really probably up until football season, is to every day hammer home where you can watch us, where you can listen, where you can find us. And we'll also hammer home the fact that if you just hit thumbs up or leave a review or leave a rating, it's going to help us tremendously. So please do that. Whether you're watching on YouTube, you can now subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, on Audible. Be sure to do those things. It helps us out a lot. Leave us a rating, leave us a review, and thank you so much in advance if you're doing that.
Always be selling. Chad is very good at that. And now I'll steal Hutton's line.
Go ahead.
Josh Heupel, your thoughts?
My thoughts are this, and this is going to be this is almost going to sound extreme to Vols fans out there, because Vols fans, and I get it, I'm one of them, I'm a UT grad, you are conditioned to react emotionally to everything. Here is my advice with Josh Heupel and this staff. Take emotion out of it with this. Impossible. Don't get overly upset when you don't get Ty Simpson, for instance. Don't get overly excited when a couple of good things happen in the offseason. Don't get overly excited about an assistant coaching hire. These are things that other fan bases have done for a while. They can take emotion occasionally out of it. I think Vols fans, because they've been so beaten down over the years, can't really do that. Here's my approach to Josh Heupel. Total wait and see. I had no reaction when he was hired, honestly. I thought, well, he's a good offensive coach. That's how I look at Josh Heupel. Top 5 every year at UCF. He had Missouri in the top 5 when he was there, which he had a very good quarterback in Drew Lock. But had Missouri in the top 5 in the SEC nationally in offense. That's a good thing. I think high end for Josh Heupel, and I want you guys to chime in on this as well. High end for year one is, because of all the departures in the transfer portal for Tennessee, it's tough to expect much better than maybe 6-6 in the high end. Schedule is favorable. I mean, for an SEC schedule, it's favorable for Tennessee, but go 6-6 and score some damn points. Be Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. I think they went 6-6, 7-5 in the SEC West, but they put up a ton of points. They put a scare in Alabama. They did some really nice things. Tennessee's defense is probably not going to be good, especially the way they're going to try to play offense so fast. Year one, score points, have some fun, have some excitement, win 6 games. I think that's a huge win for Tennessee.
I refuse to accept your wait and see. I must have more of a reaction. They hire an athletics director who is said to be fantastic. And the best he can do is hire the guy that he had at an inferior school from an inferior conference.
He is the guy, first off.
Good offensive coach.
I don't know that this is going to piss Tennessee fans off.
Say it.
But it's true.
Say it.
Why would you leave UCF right now for Tennessee? I mean, he went down the list. James Franklin wanted more money. They went back and forth with James Franklin. I still don't buy that James Franklin really wanted the job. I think he wanted a raise from Penn State. But he was willing to do the song and dance. That we know of, they contacted Matt Campbell. He said no, thanks but no thanks. Don't blame him. Luke Fickell, probably a no. I'll wait on Ohio State or NFL. Can't blame him. If Josh Heupel said, you know what, in a bad year, I'm losing 2 games at UCF in perpetuity in a program that's going to pay me money, I don't need the Tennessee headache right now under NCAA investigation. I could easily go somewhere else. And if you trust Danny White so much, why not trust Danny White to hire the guy he's already hired once before? If he believes in him that much. He's been around him for the past 3 years, right? He knows him well. So if you think he's a good AD and he likes the guy that much.
Josh Heupel.
Scott Frost?
No, Gus Malzahn.
Oh, at UCF? I would have loved Gus Malzahn at Tennessee. I'm not so sure that Gus Malzahn didn't say no to Tennessee.
Really?
And would rather be at UCF. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know that they contacted him. My point being, if you're a Tennessee fan, I think you're in a weird spot if you were pissed off and angry at a guy who wants this challenge.
Oh, I agree with
Josh
that.
Heupel was in a place where his job was not in danger, regardless of what UCF fans say. His job was clearly not in danger. He likes Danny White so much, and he wanted the challenge of Tennessee. He's a guy who I think was trying to get the Tennessee job years ago, more than likely. I don't know how you sneeze at a guy who wants the job that badly right now. Now, again, I'm not saying he's great. I don't think Tennessee fans should be excited about it by any means. But I don't know that I would go around just saying, oh, well, this guy sucks, when he's one of the few guys who wanted the job.
Not in danger in 2021, but with the new AD coming in. And so Scott Frost goes, 13-0, and they have their unbeaten season, and they raise the banner. They have the national title. And then Heupel comes in and goes 12-1.
They lose 1 and then 2.
And then 2.
And then 3.
Last year they went 6-4 overall.
Oh, yeah, in the abbreviated season.
So with that in mind, where were they trending versus what could he go do with Danny White?
Yeah, I don't know. It's easy just to say.
If we're just discussing why you go to Tennessee.
Yeah, it's easy just to say, oh, well, yeah, numerically the losses went up. I don't know what was left when Scott Frost left. I don't know what recruiting classes were. He's not a very good recruiter based on his rankings there. So it's tough for me to say, like, oh, well, was it bad that they lost one game in year one and didn't go undefeated again, or was that a good year? With whatever happened, I don't know their injury situation. I know they lost Mackenzie Milton. But was it okay that he went 6-4 given
one
injuries?
Loss was in the Fiesta Bowl at LSU.
Yeah, but you see my point. Like, I don't know what the situation was in their program as much. I'm not defending Josh Heupel. I think he's a good offensive mind.
Yeah, you're
everyone that works with him, he's a good offensive coordinator. I think the jury's still out as a head coach. He needed a Rodney Garner, who he hired. Mm-hmm. I think he needed Kevin Steele. I don't understand the Kevin Steele decision.
So weird.
I don't know why you don't just keep him on staff if he's willing to stay. There are some very weird decisions with UT athletic department and Josh Heupel with all this.
Can I tell you what the Kevin Steele hire reminded me of and how it feels to me?
I think I'm going to agree with you on this.
Jeff Fisher gave Chuck Cecil this phantom extension and pay raise right before Jeff hit the door and ended up in St. Louis. And when Fulmer hired Kevin Steele, at the time you're thinking, okay, he's coming in to help solidify what Jeremy Pruitt's doing defensively. This makes sense as they hit the road. And then Heupel doesn't keep him. It had the same type feel. Even though I'm not exactly sure if that's exactly how it went down. I do know that Philip Fulmer really liked Kevin Steele because he interviewed him prior to hiring Jeremy Pruitt.
It's interesting.
Felt like a gift to a buddy.
It did.
On the way out the window.
Well, how it resulted.
Knowing
felt
you
like
weren't going to get what you wanted. And this is a separate topic for another day. I think Jeremy Pruitt's biggest problem, other than the NCAA problems and the 3-7 season, was he had no allies other than Philip Fulmer. His lone ally on campus is also out the door. So that tells you a lot. You're not going to stick around at a job like Tennessee forever if you keep losing, but it does give you the benefit of the doubt if you're a good guy and you make friends on campus. And Jeremy Pruitt did not want to do that, and he had no friends. I think Josh Heupel, from everything I hear, people who know him, he's opposite of that. He's a friendly guy. He's business for the most part, but he's a friendly guy, gets along with people. People on campus will like him. They're going to like him a lot more if he wins. I like, for the most part, what he's done with his staff. I like that he's got a couple of proven SEC recruiters. I really like Cody Burns, who I know he hired away from Auburn to go to UCF with him and then comes to Tennessee, the former Auburn quarterback under Gus Malzahn, who's now the wide receivers coach at Tennessee. But here's my whole thing with everybody asks, what do you think about Josh Heupel? Totally wait and see. I have no positive reaction to it or no huge negative reaction to it.
I applaud your general feel for what the Tennessee job is now. Is there any chance the Vols fan base is where you are, or do they still regard it as this supreme job that people should have been lining up for and that White should have been able to land a much bigger fish for?
I think Tennessee fans understand. Well, it's not just – I don't think it's going to be a less than desired job forever. I mean, James Franklin's not even flirting with Tennessee as a realistic option if it's not a really good job. It's still a very good job, but because of the cloud of uncertainty with the NCAA, and by the way, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think they're going to have a one-year bowl ban probably this year, and it'll be done. And a couple scholarships reduced. There were no McDonald's bags of cash. None of that is true. Don't listen to it. It's a funny meme. It's going to be a joke that everyone's going to believe is true for a while, but it's not true. But I just think it's a job that there's so much around it right now that it was always going to be difficult to pull a James Franklin, a Matt Campbell, a Luke Fickell, who I would have preferred of that group, as opposed to Josh Heupel. So when it gets to the level of hiring UCF's sitting head coach, I don't think that's the worst case scenario for Tennessee, as opposed to going and hire some coordinator somewhere and giving them a chance to be a first-time head coach. But I also don't think the Tennessee fans should be doing backflips over Josh Heupel. And guess what? Tennessee fans aren't doing backflips over Josh Heupel. That has not been the case.
It was measured. He promised measured, and he delivered on measured.
The opposite of Tennessee fans, measured.
The
love Tennessee
headlines
fans.
across the
Chad likes to measure
NFL as we wrap up. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith now teammates in New England. They're calling that Tight England now with the Patriots. Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill in a quarterback competition in New Orleans with Sean Payton. And a corner off the board where Seattle's top corner, Shaquille Griffin, headed to Jacksonville. A 3-year, $40 million deal, upwards of $45 million, according to Ian Rappaport on that. And Gronkowski's back in Tampa Bay. The Bucs are just re-signing their own guys. Hard to blame them. They just won the Super Bowl. But the Bills were apparently really hard after Gronkowski on the free agent market.
The Bills were interested in Jonnu Smith. If Jameis Winston wins the New Orleans job,
Depends. I trust Sean Payton. I said that yesterday.
I trust Sean Payton, but I don't trust Jameis Winston, and neither should Sean Payton.
Sean
Winston
Payton
came in and won a
trusted
game.
Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston.
They both won
initially.
games for New Orleans last year, one of the top teams in the league.
It's different to patch things while you're waiting on your Hall of Famer to come back than to go 16 or 17 games with him.
Hey, coming up tomorrow on the show, WWE Hall of Famer Jeff Jarrett is going to be.
Oh, that guy they found on the street for me to
he's
argue
around
with
here.
during the commercial?
Yeah, he's around here.
That guy. Paul's favorite.
He's going to swing by and say hello here at Blackbird Studio. Also, Greg Cosell of NFL Films on the show tomorrow.
Deserves a round of applause.
We will discuss all things NFL free agency with the best in the business who gave us a shout. He will be on the show coming up tomorrow. Some other guests lined up later in the week. Also, Chad, on Friday, speaking of later in the week, we've got the OutKick VIP watch party we're pumped about.
6th and Peabody, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. special time, special broadcast leading right into tip-off of the early games of the tournament. We'll be there all day, eating, drinking, enjoying your company. Hopefully you'll enjoy ours. OutKick VIPs have specials going on all day. We are pumped about it. This
T-shirts available with this fantastic
Yes.
new logo. I'll be getting a couple.
OutKick.com is where you can find it. You can also find Clay's show, OutKick the Show, coming up later this afternoon. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. Thanks for giving us the thumbs up if you'd like the broadcast today. We're going to be back at it tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. We'll be hitting the NFL free agency headlines. Had more to get to. We will hit it tomorrow on the show. Huge thank you to our entire crew with Neon Media, doing a fabulous job for day number 2. Jacob Swanson, Lance Lee, David Reed, the chairman of the board, who is with us as well today. Also Charlie Quartz, the entire crew. I'm leaving a ton of people out. Thank you guys for all the hard work. Emma, back across town, making the show happen for us as well.
It feels like we're back, doesn't it?
How did day
like
two?
we're back?
How did day 2 go compared to day 1 for you guys?
I thought it was good. I thought it was a natural progression into what it should be. Paul?
Like riding a bike.
It was fun for me. I hope it was
I've enjoyed
for
it.
you all.
It's good to be back.
I'm having a blast. I hope you guys are having a blast.
And it's great to have David Reed back.
Yes.
That's the story.
That's
of
the
day.
highlight of the day.
Yes.
Highlight of the day. Join us tomorrow, 11 a.m. right here on this channel, the OutKick 360 OutKick OTT Network.